Are you trying to dance, Nick?
Well, I'm guilty. I can't dance, you can see with my duck shoes, but I thought it'd be a good idea to keep anybody energized. You know, it's amazing how you can put an AI pun into everything these days.
Although there is no hope for you, Nick. I'm sorry, but that's one thing even AI cannot optimize.
Really? I always thought AI could teach you anything.
And speaking of energy and AI, today we have gathered here for ENRich 2025 at the Oval in Hyatt Regency to go through an extremely complicated topic, which is reimagining the energy enterprise. But first of all, let me clap for all of those who've made it despite Delhi traffic.
And must be such a great day for energy, right? How much fuel they would have burned to get here.
Especially you, Nick. How much energy did you actually burn to get here?
I just live 2 minutes away, so.
Oh, okay. So you are not a consumer for us and not a potential client for us. All right, so let me introduce myself. I'm 𝗖𝗵𝘁𝗁𝗃𝗀. I am a partner with Business Consulting and the National Lead for Clean Energy.
Really? Energy? So you must know a lot about what we can expect today, right?
Not really, Nick, because if I look at it, over the last 25 years that I have been in this sector, there's been change, that's for sure. You know, I've seen policies coming, I've seen new markets, I've seen new technologies, at so many different levels, even business models and so on and so forth. But what we are seeing now cannot be described as change. It's a tectonic shift, it's a massive shift. And if I were to look at the main drivers, it's definitely geopolitics, extreme weather events, or even things like AI. I don't know, AI is probably taking a tectonic shift to another level altogether. So I'm really looking forward to seeing and hearing from the experts that we have today. And these are not only absolute top-notch brains from India, but we have global experts here. And I'm looking forward to hearing their perspectives on how to really navigate all of these changes that are going to happen and are happening.
That's wonderful. So, hello everyone, I'm Nikhil. I'm not an energy guy. I lead the consumer sector for KPMG in India, and I'm really looking forward to learn a bit from you, especially being one of your largest consumers.
Frankly, I think Anish invited you because the audience here is pretty bored of seeing him over the last 8 years. Raise your hands. Who is bored? Okay, I think that was only you and me. So, but seriously, I mean, the reason why we always have fresh faces, because the best ideas may come not from experts, contrary to what I just said. The best ideas actually may come from people who are, looking at it from an outside-in perspective, and that's the beauty of ENRich. It's fresh ideas, fresh energy, fresh outcomes, and a completely new way of thinking about the energy future.
Absolutely. It seems that a lot is changing, a lot is uncertain, and I hope that today's speakers help us navigate this entire time and teach us how not to panic in a time like this. But Anvesha, isn't this also a very special year? I believe that ENRich is finally going to become an adult soon.
It is sweet 16th year of ENRich. I'm so happy. I didn't think that I would be so happy other than the fact, when my daughter turns 16, but I've seen the journey for the last 10 years. And I'm so excited to say that this is the 16th edition of our annual energy conference. And honestly, it's gone beyond a platform for just ideas. It's a bridge between ideas and real world implementation.
But I have an interesting observation, right? Given that we've established I live very close to this place, why is ENRich always at the Hyatt? I thought Anish was the global lead of energy and all of that, but why Hyatt?
Well, he's the global head, so he has the choice of the location and he can call all the global guys over. But honestly, the reason is because, like it or not, we are the biggest energy consumer, one of the biggest energy consumers in the world, and frankly, India is an important country. And honestly, over the last 16 years, ENRich has built such a huge legacy over here and has got such a big community. This is the community that we want in the room, and of course, welcoming and including as many as possible, but this continues to be the legacy that we will build over here.
Lovely. So it's not only a talk fest, it's a do fest as well, right?
Absolutely, and it has sequels. You got it? It's not only an annual event. So what we've started doing over the last couple of years is that we have sequels. And we call these sequels Baby ENRich, not Baby ENRich, joking. It's ENRich Labs. And we take it beyond Hyatt and in fact even beyond the city and beyond maybe India as well. And the idea is to get the top thinkers in a closed door, and have all the industry leaders there and take the ideas from here, hammer it out and bring it to fruition in terms of actionable solutions that we can take to the industry.
So you're basically saying if ENRich was a power plant, it would be running from ideas, right? So as a good renewable transformation, this is good. They finally transformed from gas to ideas. It's a good renewable transformation.
And speaking of power and gas and networking, I did see that there was a lot of networking going on. You know what's the beauty about these conferences? It's actually renewable in a sense. You know why? Because it's clean and it is efficient. So that's what ENRich is actually all about. Now let's get down to actually some serious business, and I think we are really all warmed up over here.
Yeah. So I'd like to invite, given that you've already sort of started this, but let's have an official start. I'd like to invite our CEO, Mr. Yezdi Nagporewalla, to officially share his opening words and declare this open.
Thank you. Thanks, Nick. Just for your information, while you spoke about traffic in Delhi, I've traveled from Mumbai for this event. So that's adding to our ESG quotient. But distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends, a very good morning, and it gives me immense pleasure to welcome each of you. I'd also like to welcome our KPMG's global leadership of ESG, who are spending the next few days in Delhi. Each year, ENRich has grown in scope, in stature, but more importantly, in relevance. And today it stands as a globally recognized platform where leaders and stakeholders from the government, industry, and academia come together to navigate our challenges. And over the past 16 years, as Anvesha mentioned, this has evolved from a dialogue that was internal. It started off, I remember, 16 years ago, 17 years ago, as an internal debate and a dialogue. And today it's turned into a forum which actually sets the agenda for the sector. It enables conversations. And these conversations are not only timely, but action-oriented. So what makes ENRich unique is its ability to bring strands together into a single integrated conversation with a global perspective. And as we gather this world which is defined with uncertainty and parallelly with opportunities, ENRich continues this journey. This year's theme, Reimagining the Energy Enterprise in Times of Change and Uncertainty, reflects today's reality. The world today is more unsettled than settled. And geopolitical realignments, which we see aligning and realigning almost every week, have created global risks as well as global opportunities. They are forcing us to reshape supply chains, which in turn reshapes capital flows and energy prices. And at the same time, technology, which is led by artificial intelligence, is advancing at a very different pace. And that absorbs both excitement and unease. Sustainability has moved from being an aspiration to defining the test of resilience and giving each organization a license to operate. For energy enterprises, this means strategy, this means structure, and operations have to be fundamentally rethought. The enterprise of the future will never look like the past. That is exactly what we hope to aim to transit with ENRich this year. Amidst all the turbulence, the India story stands apart. The Indian economy stays strong. We have global headwinds, but growth continues at a pace which is very different in content and timeliness. We probably are the fastest growing economy in the world today. And that is coupled with inflation, which is contained, where local demand is robust, and our overall macroeconomic position is stable. And this is not by accident. You will also hear it from the minister later today. This is by design. This is with prudent policies and a decade of reforms. And I emphasize on this only because the next decade is something to watch India as it transforms. And this has grown on two pillars. The first pillar is manufacturing. India is becoming gradually the trusted hub for high quality, for cost competitive production, and almost all major players are expanding here, and new industrial ecosystems are taking shape. And this stretches from electronics to renewables, from defense to automotive. We have infrastructure improvements, we have logistic reforms, and the targeted incentives are reinforcing this momentum. The second pillar is services. Now, this has been a strength for some time now, and we see that transforming into a different scale, into a different level of sophistication. And the evidence of that is the presence and the success and the relevance of the global capability centers, the GCCs in India as we call them. Looking ahead to 2030, modern energy enterprise will be very different from today. AI will be in the center of this transformation, and it will enable predictive measures, maintenance of assets, real-time balancing of grids with renewable energy, and a sharper demand forecasting. It will allow enterprises to pursue their decarbonization plans in a way that has not been possible in the past. And this is where GCCs come in. This is where GCCs will be decisive, and they will bring structure, governance, and execution capabilities. In energy, this means they can serve as a hub where models are trained on reliable data, deployed across geographies, and continuously measured for performance as well as ethics. Instead of being cost centers, GCCs will emerge more as nerve centers. And AI provides the transformative potential, and GCC provides the path of scale. And this is where they come together to define the architecture of enterprise of the future. If this is the future we anticipate, then our leaders have to act with urgency. And three priorities stand out. First, and this is in no particular order, but this is, to me, it's the most important, is to embed AI across the enterprise and not in pockets and not in fragments. This means thinking beyond pilots and building end-to-end systems where insights from AI drive decisions in generation, transmission, distribution, and customer services as well. Second, create the right structure and operating models with GCC at the center. And this involves investing in shared platforms, governance frameworks, and cross-functional teams that allow GCCs to operate and orchestrate. And third is give equal importance to culture and the way of working. Technology can take root if leadership behaviors, incentives, and performance management are aligned to the new reality. And culture is often the hardest barrier to overcome, especially in a transformation of this scale. And this is precisely what ENRich 2025 is designed to explore. Over the next 2 days, we will hear perspectives on the policy, technology, capital, and culture, which converge to reimagine the energy capabilities and enterprise. The value of such a forum lies in translating dialogue into direction and connecting debate with decisive policy. At KPMG, we see our role as conveners of this process, creating a platform where ideas can be tested, exchanged, and a collective action forged. As we begin ENRich 2025, I encourage each of you to engage deeply in the conversations ahead, to challenge and provoke ideas, and share your own perspectives. It's not a one-man or a one organization's job. It needs pulling in the right direction, but collectively. I once again thank you and welcome each of you to ENRich 2025.
Thank you, Yezdi, for the address, and we are looking forward to fantastic, another AI joke.
Another AI pun, yeah. That could have been your only takeaway from what Yezdi said, right?
So I think I heard a lot of uncertainty, the word. I heard a lot of change. I also heard some really positive words like implementation, finance, looking at GCCs, looking at accelerators, like capital, and of course culture. Yes. But again, AI.
Well, I mean, my big takeaway was obviously this is as much a cultural transformation as anything else. And, I remembered a good anecdote, right? So navigating all of this complexity reminded me of my favorite book, which is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right? Where this guy is trying to get across the entire galaxy, trying to navigate it. And a lot of the agenda this time of ENRich seems like it's a way to help us navigate through all of it. And my favorite part of it is actually what is written on the cover of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is the 2 words, don't panic, right? So,
no,
panic.
Absolutely. But we always have to remember that one person's panic is another person's opportunity.
That's the consultant in us, right?
But seriously, there is an opportunity for all of us, in all this uncertainty, and I would not call it panic. And who better to help us understand what's going on, not to panic, and also understand what's the opportunity out there than our global head of energy, natural resources, and chemicals, Anish Dey, who has been the host of this this event, ENRich, for the last 8 years. Anish, over to you.
Thank you, Anvesha and Nick, and thank you for the great show, the Nick and Anvesha show, if we can call it. Yes, and Nick, finally the consumer finds a voice on the stage. Yes, indeed. So, great. So, over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to take you through my take on what's happening across the world. I do this every year at ENRich. This year has been easy and difficult. Easy because there was no lack of material to comment on. Difficult because it's hard to make sense of some of those changes which are happening around us. So that's what I'm going to try to do. It's not the only voice, it's not the definitive voice, but those are ideas I want to put across to you to think about and converse today, as well as we discuss and as Yezdi mentioned, through various forums, including the ENRich Labs, which happen now more or less every quarter. 2025, I would say, is a year of fundamental reset. It's been a very, very busy year on the geopolitical career, the timeline, the calendar. We've seen massive disruptions around Ukraine, Russia, around Ukraine and Russia, around Gaza, Iran. On the trade front, we have seen tariffs go up, come in, go up, go down, go back again, various kinds of perturbations. What has not really been perturbed is oil prices. Now, any of us who have been in the industry for long enough, we know how jumpy oil prices used to be at the slightest issue. And yet we see Brent, and this is Brent, being flat through and through. It's almost like we have normalized disruption. I don't know whether it's a good thing or not, but we seem to have normalized disruption. And that's the first reset I want to call out, that the disruption in the world has been normalized. Now let's go beyond that. The man who unquestionably dominated the scene in 2025. And I've been asked in various forums, why does Trump do what he does? I'll leave the personality elements of that outside and go back into some of the issues which Donald Trump and America faces, which guides a lot of the actions. And mind you, America is the largest economy in the world. If something happens there, there are inevitable implications for the rest of the world. And I'm going to look at it through 5 lenses. There will be a 6th and a 7th, but let's stick to these 5 for the moment. And the first is US trade deficit. What was 0 when this chart started in 1992, more or less, is $130 billion annually. That's large. That has caused a lot of responses on tariffs. Now, whether those are rational responses or not, we won't get in there. But we understand that there was a cause for some response. And let's leave it at that and go to the next point, which is indebtedness. $36 trillion. Last month, after much acrimony, the debt ceiling has been taken up to $40 trillion. It has been a conservative anthem. They didn't want to take this up, but the reality of the matter is that it's not just old conservative principles, it's about the people, how they feel about it, how they live. That has been causing a significant amount of social spend. That was also one of the reasons why Elon Musk and Doge started all those cutting initiatives which hit various parts of the world, including programs in India. But you can understand where some of those come from. US has been the global police since the Second World War. In case of NATO, in 2023, United States was bearing 2/3 of the costs of NATO, essentially for defending Europe. Now, there's been a big pushback on that from Donald Trump, and there's a correction which we have seen in the process as well. There have been big fears about productivity declines. The numbers don't necessarily show. Unemployment rate is still 4.5%, which is pretty bearable, normal unemployment rate. But there's a feeling in the leadership that that animal spirit, which has driven the US economy to where it is no longer there. And there's an urge to get that spirit back. And finally, the impact of drugs. We've seen that. I have seen that when I travel across the US. It's hollowing out society. It's spilling on the streets. And there's a lot of response around some of these things. And a lot of responses were directed towards Red China, including the last point on drugs to supply stop the fentanyl supply chain. China has clearly emerged as another pole in this whole battle. Now, it was a unipolar world since the fall of the Berlin Wall, since the Cold War got over. But over a period of time, that has changed. And US now clearly has identified that China is an adversary. And a lot of the measures which have been taken are directed around the fact that there are dominance of China which exists and hence has to be avoided or has to be prevented. Let's start with trade and tariffs. This picture everybody will remember. This was the Liberation Day when outside the White House this board was set up. China is at the top of that list with 67%. It wasn't the highest. Vietnam was at 90, India was at 50. But over a period of time, through its many ups and downs, China is less than half that number where we started. India still continues to be at 50 with 25% base tariffs and 25% additional supplementary tariffs, which have been secondary tariffs, which have been put on India for buying Russian oil. Now, China buys 3 times the Russian oil as India, but it's not facing secondary tariffs. India is facing secondary tariffs. And this has sometimes perplexed a lot of us in this room, outside this room, but that's the reality at this point of time. When it comes to China, the hands are often tied, and I'm going to dwell on that a little bit more. Let's get to the second area where the US has dominance or had dominance and declared dominance when the new age generative AI technologies came in. Okay, and this was a loud proclamation that of being ahead in chips, ahead in AI, till DeepSeek came and actually changed the game, doing things much more efficiently, much more less energy consuming way, much less compute being used. And that brought some realism into that picture. But DeepSeek didn't happen in a day. Next few things which you're going to see, a chart which goes, transitions between 2015 and 2024 will tell you the story. In 2015, there was only Peking University in the top 10 list in terms of contributions for scientific articles. In 2024, there was only one US university. There were 8 then, there's only one US university, Harvard. 8 of them are Chinese. So this is how it has changed, and it's showing up in the closing of the gap between the US and China. And these are reasonably trustable statistics, where there's a big catch-up which has already happened in AI, semiconductors, biotech, space, quantum. And as we go forward, given what we are seeing in academic research, I wouldn't be surprised personally if this chart flipped over in the next 3 or 4 years. Then comes the dollar, the reserve currency of the world, and the US administration has been very loudly calling out about the strength of the dollar being preserved, as its reserve currency status being preserved, and nobody should attempt it, including the BRICS countries, should aim to find an alternative. Well, that alternative has been on the way for a very long time. China today issues all its foreign debt in yuan. It has swap arrangements with 32 central banks. It has a payment system which is an alternative to SWIFT. So you can actually transact without going through the SWIFT route, and SWIFT, DK Joshi is here, he will talk about the choke points. It was a choke point. China and also Russia have found their ways around. And the treasury holdings which China had in US treasuries has been down. Today, in this year, the dollar is down 10% against the euro. That's how stark it is. In fact, The Economist calls out in the last edition that China is ditching the dollar fast. It's still not the reserve currency of the world, but it's a very different place from where it was earlier. But let's bring it back to energy, which is our core focus of this event and our discussions. 77% of battery cell manufacturing capability is in China. Bring it to solar and wind, and I'll talk solar. This is a data from 2021, but the facts have not fundamentally changed. 79% of polysilicon, 97% of wafers, 75% of modules, 85% of cells. There's a full domination. And this is the domination which even the US administration has been worried about, and hence it's indexed differently. There's another worry the US administration had, which was on, and not just the US, actually everywhere in the world we have this worry on global supply of critical minerals, where the mining capacity, but more importantly the refining capacity, sits in China. And over the last 15, 20 years, that capacity in the rest of the world has been decimated because it's far too expensive. And this also forced the hands of nations, including the US, because some of these go not only for renewable energy production or battery production, it actually goes to manufacture modern armaments, which means that if you have to have a credible defense or a power against China, you need China, and that ties your hand. And that's where we're seeing a lot of the responses being tempered in the case of China. So the question which often comes is that, okay, the same question which I raised, China buys 3 times the oil as India from Russia. Why not put it on China? This tells you a part of that story. Let's bring it back to the core of energy and what is happening in the US. And what we are seeing is that things on which there is a lot of foreign dependence, that being reduced, cancelled in a way, and a lot of other things, including natural gas, coal, nuclear, being promoted because that's where US has indigenous capabilities and technologies which can stand that test over there. And that's something, so now you understand a lot of the motivations on why it is not just about how good the wind farm looks. That's a consideration, personal consideration, but there's more to it. There's a whole geopolitical story playing out over there. What is also done is that it's not just stayed restricted to those individual theaters. As we saw in the SCO a few weeks ago, it's now changed the power dynamics. You put secondary tariffs, it has some implications somewhere else. And Russia, China, and India were literally holding hands, literally holding hands. There was another event in Tiananmen Square, a military demonstration by China in the following week. And that was an absolute spectacular show, which showed how far China has come in defense technology. And it was intended to show to Donald Trump, and he was loudly watching. He was on Truth Social saying that they wanted me to watch, and I was watching. And amidst all this uncertainty, the whole thing is that the uncertainty is worth its weight in gold, as it says. The uncertainty index on the left-hand side, the red chart, has shot through the roof. What has also shot through the roof is the gold prices. Now, you see the yellow part of it is still 2024, and the red part, which goes up, is still what happened in 2025. 30%, more than 30% increase in gold prices, a stable commodity in just 1 year. In fact, when we were preparing this presentation, which takes a little time as you would imagine, the red part just started stretching up bigger and bigger, longer and longer. That's exactly what happened in the last few months, because a lot of it is the uncertainty ditching the dollar. Okay, let's move forward beyond geopolitics and energy into the world of climate, very briefly, and technology. So while energy and climate seem to have been overtaken by politics, the climate disasters we were fearing seems to be like pushed beyond the geopolitical disasters we seem to be dealing with today. But it's not gone away. There remain existential questions. KPMG does the statistical review of world energy, which used to be the BP statistical review of world energy. Along with the Energy Institute, we produce it now. And as this chart shows, we are seeing this fossil fuel concentration not going away. 86% of the world's supply is still from fossil fuels, despite all the efforts of decarbonization. And that has implications. We are really staring down the barrel on climate. Floods, wildfires, coral bleaching, drought, heat waves, rainfall, coming to the last point on rainfall, this city has never seen the kind of rainfall that we have seen ever in our history. In my 23 years, I have never seen that. In fact, one smart aleck neighbor of mine said that my next car is a boat. Now, leave those facile comments aside. The reality is that our infrastructure, our systems are just not ready for taking this kind of hit. And as we said, it's not just about rainfall, it's about everything coming together and causing some severe challenges now and going forward. But there's a financial consequence of that. What we are seeing is that the losses are mounting, the uninsurable losses are mounting, and that bar at the end will become taller, and the red part of it will become larger and larger, is the fear as we go forward. The problem is that half the time insurance is not available for some of these recurrent losses, and when insurance is available, it's so expensive that it's hard to bear that cost. So this is where we are, practical terms, we are seeing big challenges coming up. Let me now go in the last part of my presentation to what is happening in the world of technology. But before going into AI and technology, which I inevitably have to, Nick and Anvesha have set me up, I must have enough to cover the bases. But before that, I wanted to show you a couple of nice pictures. This is the Spitfire, that's the Concorde. Just 32 years between the maiden flights of those. Concorde, an absolute epitome of technology, a commercial failure eventually, but that's just 32 years between them. That's how fast technology moves. But now I bring you to this chart on this side. You see the bars on the right-hand side? The extreme one is modern science, before that is the age of enlightenment, and before that it's the age of Renaissance. And in between is what is called the Dark Ages, anti-science period, which lasted almost 1,000 years. And somebody drew that dotted line up, just telling us that there could have been a possibility that if that dark anti-science period hadn't happened, generative AI, agentic AI would have been happening 1,000 years ago. Of course, this room, how it would have looked now, we don't know. But that's how science can progress, unless it falls into the dark ages. And we are seeing how quickly it is progressing now. And it's been a very, very confusing scene, unsettling scene on the world of AI, because we've seen the massive amount of possibilities, but realization has been slow. I have agonized, and Pritesh, you are in the room, you and I have spoken. Why is this so slow? Why is the adoption of AI so slow? And then I've come to realize that apart from other things, it was just a very unsettled period. But now we are seeing a little bit of the froth settling down. Computational AI, generative AI, and agentic AI coming together deliver massive transformation. Because of that, you can do many things. You can imagine, you can solve, you can trust, you can care, you can hope. You will see a lot of instances outside this room playing around these words. But let me make it real for you. We in our country, and in many parts of the world, including Australia, where we have lots of colleagues in this room from Australia, there are massive solar rooftop programs, right? It's a utilities nightmare, it's a customer's nightmare, it's everybody's nightmare, because it just disturbs the grid so much. Customers don't understand what is required, engineers don't have the time. So a typical cycle time for approval of a connection in Australia, where we work with Endeavour Energy on this, was 21 days. That has come down to 18 minutes. 21 days to 18 minutes, because it has cut out human wait time, which is the biggest time we spend. Human wait time is the biggest time we spend. It's cut out that. It's facilitated the customers trained them, given them coaching through AI to do the right things. And this is the kind of transformation we are seeing. This is not an isolated area. In each of these themes, each of these areas, you can see so much we can do with modern AI. The question which comes is that what's happening in terms of the financial returns? So much of money is going in by the hyperscalers, the big players, big tech. What is coming out? And just to put the numbers in perspective, $2.9 trillion is forecast to be spent on data centers alone between 2025 and 2028. That doesn't include the power plants which will fire those data centers. This is just the data center investment. Okay. What is coming out of it, and what's the big Western players are getting? $50 billion a year. So in effect, it's less than 2% of the investment is coming out as revenues, not profits. Of course, it's all losses there. Just 2% is coming out of revenue. So the question then comes, is that given this situation, will modern AI stall? We are looking for the answers to that. I don't think we have a clear answer, but we have parallels from history. And this is from the railroad revolution in Britain in the 1840s. Lots of money went in to create infrastructure and carriage. Nobody made money, but it changed the way the country lived and traveled. 11,000 miles of network which still survives and serves to the day. Modern AI is something like that. It's going to create one way or the other essential infrastructure on which we will all travel. It will change the way we live and work. Now I come to the last part of what I had to say, which is what Yezdi also mentioned, that the tech and AI transformation will reshape the enterprise, including the energy enterprises, while establishing very, very foundational infrastructure. And the GCC, as he called out, will be at the center of these things. In fact, the GCC scene has been on for a long while now, and as we'll see next, India is at the center of it. A lot of these people, all of them are present, and a lot of them are in this room. I can see the thumbs going up. Many of them have done slices of things, in some places finance, HR, technology, engineering. But what I believe is going to happen between now and 2030, which is a big reset, is that the front and back of the enterprise is coming together, because you have seamless technology bringing the front and back of the enterprise coming together. And as a consequence, you really won't have that image of the GCC as a back office. It is the center of gravity of the organization. It is the nerve center, as we are calling out. Minister will be here in an hour's time. We will be releasing that, where we are now calling out that between now and 2030, the whole enterprise, the way it looks, is going to be reset with the GCC as the nerve center. India is where the action is. 50% of the GCCs are here for many reasons: scale, talent, experience, conducive policies. Not just the tier 1 cities, but the tier 2 and tier 3 cities coming up fast. So there are lots of good things which are happening. And we do see India being a central part of this journey as the enterprise modernizes. This is my final slide. And this is the biggest reset for India in particular. Some home truths have emerged for India in 2025. Last year, those of you who were there will remember that I was agonizing that India is a projects economy. We do power projects, we do renewable projects, we do refineries. Okay? We are a nation of converters, set up projects and convert. And I had said that we need to move to become a products economy, designing products, adding value, and the projects only feed to that. Day before yesterday, I was with Mr. 𝗔𝗱𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, advisor to Prime Minister, and he's going to be here tomorrow evening, 3 o'clock. And we said that that's no longer enough. We are so vulnerable. So now, in some sense, we have to work upstream of that. Into capital goods, Yezdi called out that some great developments have happened. It's a start, but we need to build on that, including in the energy sector. Into innovation, baking in the innovation into the ecosystem. Again, with industry leaders in this room and outside the room, I've agonized that there's not uptake of innovation. The innovators are somewhere, the enterprise is somewhere. It has to change. And finally, research. We saw what research did to China. The strength of the nation came from that. We have to discover our strengths in that process on a similar basis. And this is where not the job of the academia, the government, the industry. It's all our jobs together. And this is what this platform is about. It's not the only platform where it will happen. It has to happen on many. But over a period of time, ENRich has become the platform for deliberating on these issues, debating it, finding the ways, the doing thing rather than the talking thing alone. That's what we need to make that transition. But conversations are very important. Without that conversation, if we jump to a decision, it's likely to be a faulty decision. So that the conversations, the debates happen here and in the ENRich labs. And then we will find a way, I'm sure, as a country. So we go into not only these questions, but the so what of those questions. That's what we are going to do today and tomorrow. And finally, to end this, I do believe that this, if we get this right as a country and as citizens of the country, it will be not only be good for India, it will be good for the world. India holds 1/5 of humanity. It has the capability to move not for itself alone, but for the rest of the world, especially the developing world, which is going to see severe, severe challenges in many parts. There's a contribution to make, and there's a future to secure. Thank you.
That was worrying and exciting at the same time. That's just so much to unpack.
I know. I was reflecting upon the statement that I made earlier, which was, panic is going to make the consultants rich. I actually was deeply reflecting during the presentation, and I thought that panic will make the gold holders rich. So we need to get the gold hoarding done instead of being consultants. But of course, jokes aside, thanks to Anish, I think, this really kind of decoded the whole energy, geopolitics. I think decoded Trump, which is, I found that fantastic. That was so insightful because one is trying to understand what's going on, and I think that was really good. Decoding China, and these, I would say, are the two biggest forces that will actually determine where the energy future is headed, honestly. And also, of course, eventually getting to AI, because we, frankly, it's not a joke, but we frankly do not have solutions unless we adopt AI. Although, of course, that note was sobering, that nobody makes money, but there is an infrastructure which everybody will ride on. Hopefully, that's not going to be there, for the AI industry over there. But thank you so much. So our next speaker is, of course, going to help us demystify it further. He has spent his days making sense of the world's most complicated relationships.
And he also knows how to keep America's lights on, literally.
So he is Mr. 𝗔𝗊 Chatterjee, Chairman of Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, someone who has very successfully navigated policies, power markets, and plenty of cross currents. Welcome, Mr. Chatterjee.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I want to start. Amar naam 𝗔𝗊 Chatterjee. Ami Kolkata chele. Ami bhalo Bangla bolte pari na, bhalo buঝতে পারি. Ami bachar moton bolte pari. So many Manalok view me as mentally challenged because of my inability to speak Bengali. But it's truly an honor to be here, to be a participant in ENRich. I have to start with a point of personal privilege. This is the 6th time that I have come to India, come to New Delhi in an official capacity. And as someone who grew up in the United States of America, as the son of Indian immigrants, I had a beautiful moment back in 2019. I was meeting with my counterpart at the time in the Czech Republic. I was doing a tour through Europe, meeting with my energy and electricity regulatory counterparts. And my counterpart in the Czech Republic commented to me, and I didn't really fully appreciate it in the moment. He said, only in America could the son of Indian immigrants rise to the position that you had, chairman of the United States Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, that it would never happen in Prague, it would never happen in the Czech Republic, it would never happen in most places in Europe. And so for me to come here again to speak about the significant energy issues that are facing not just America, but the world, and to do so in my family's motherland, it is something that I take deep pride in. And so I appreciate you all giving me a moment to reflect upon that. But moving past the personal niceties, I'm here for a reason. That was an excellent presentation trying to kind of decode what's happening in the US, what's happening in the policy landscape, where is our energy trajectory going. So I'm going to build upon what was genuinely an outstanding presentation. I'm going to give you my perspective as someone who was the principal energy regulator in the United States. So I'll start with what is FERC? FERC is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. It is the government agency in the United States that is principally responsible for oversight of competitive wholesale power markets, as well as evaluating infrastructure. Here, think natural gas pipelines, liquefied natural gas, export facilities, licensing for hydropower, looking potentially at geothermal and its impacts in markets. FERC is generally the most significant energy regulatory body in the US and plays a very critical role. Now, I want to speak, because we're talking about decoding Trump, a little bit to FERC's structure and why it matters. FERC is an independent agency. When at full strength, it has 5 commissioners, each who serve staggered 5-year terms. The theory being that you can outlast the president that appointed you. And this is very significant because it enables FERC commissioners to be independent. Look, I'll be candid. I am a Republican from Kentucky. I spent the bulk of my career working for Senator Mitch McConnell, a very conservative senator from Kentucky, very powerful senator in the US, and I was appointed chairman of FERC by Donald Trump. I was also fired as chairman of FERC by Donald Trump because I was independent in the manner in which I went about my role. And this is so critical because when it comes to something as significant as electricity, I genuinely believe we cannot allow politics to infect something that is so critical, not just to every American, but to every citizen globally. So what are some of the opportunities, obstacles, and challenges that we are facing in the US and globally when it comes to electricity? There's something that unfortunately has taken place over the course of the past couple of decades, in that we have been the beneficiaries in the US of relatively flat demand. We have not seen a significant spike in demand for the better part of 2 decades in the US. And what has happened over the course of that time is, unfortunately, politics has started to interfere with decisions that used to be made by engineers. When we were facing demand challenges in the past, and when we dealt with things like electricity policy, in the US, decisions were made not necessarily based on one's political affiliation, whether you were a conservative or a liberal, whether you were a Republican or a Democrat. They tended to be made based on where you lived, what was over your head and what was underneath your feet. When I first came to work as a young aide in the United States Congress in the early 2000s, the chairman and the ranking member of the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, this is the most significant governing body in the US Congress when it comes to energy policy, they were both from the same state, New Mexico. One was a Republican, one was a Democrat. And in those early years, this was during the presidency of George W. Bush in the US, the Senate majority actually flipped and flopped back and forth several times, yet the agenda of the Senate Energy Committee never changed because the two leaders did what was in the best interest of New Mexico, the states they represented, and not of their political party. That started to shift in the foregoing years as climate increasingly became an issue in the US and became a politically divisive issue. Now, what's unfortunate, to be honest, and ironic, is that initially climate was not political. It was a wonky, technical issue that was really the dominion of kind of lawyers and engineers. People, it's hard to foresee today. In 2008, John McCain, a senator from Arizona, was the Republican nominee for president of the United States. He ultimately was defeated by Barack Obama, but he was the primary author of a cap and trade bill designed to mitigate emissions in the US. In 2012, Mitt Romney was the Republican nominee for president of the United States. He went on to be a United States senator from Utah, and he openly called for a price on carbon to address emissions in the US. There was a point in time when climate change and decarbonization was not political. It has unfortunately become political, and we have now gotten ourselves into a place in the United States where policy decisions are being driven more by political interests. And I am someone who, the reason I'm here at this forum, the reason I speak on television, the reason I author op-eds, is because I do think it's a problem, but I think it's a solvable problem. And I think there are mechanisms in place that ENRich is going to cover that will put us in a position we can solve some of these challenges. So what has essentially happened in the US is energy has become heavily politicized. If you are for clean energy and climate solutions, you are viewed as being from the political left. And if you're for fossil fuels, you are viewed as being from the political right. And for me, having served as chairman of an organization whose responsibility was making sure that the lights would come on, that the simple exercise of hitting a switch that Americans take for granted, that the lights would come on, I have no patience or tolerance for this type of politicization. And what was beautifully touched upon in our past presentation was, I think, the changing dynamic that is coming not just to the US but globally, and that is AI and what AI will mean. So as I stated earlier, we've been the beneficiaries in the US of better part of flat demand for 20 years. That's about to change. AI, data centers necessary to support AI are part of the equation, but aren't the only component. We've also got cloud computing and quantum computing, streaming services, crypto and Bitcoin mining, increased vehicle electrification and building electrification, a reshoring of manufacturing in the United States. All of these things are incredibly energy intensive endeavors that are going to put huge pressure on grid operators to maintain not just reliability, to make sure that when Americans hit the switch that the lights come on, but affordability as well, to make sure that Americans can pay the necessary costs associated with energy generation, distribution, and consumption. Look, we're here to decode Trump. We're trying to figure out what Trump means for energy, for America, for India. ENRich is about engaging in a dialogue, addressing some of these complicated questions and what it means. I'll tell you, as somebody who is Trump's principal energy regulator, it's hard to decode Donald Trump. I'm just being honest. Donald Trump made two promises to the American people in his re-election campaign in 2024 based on energy. One was to win the AI race against China for national security purposes, and two was to significantly bring down the cost of electricity to alleviate some of the inflationary burdens that American consumers had been feeling. Well, the reality is those are antithetical goals. In order to win the AI race for national security purposes against China, we need to understand that it's going to require a tremendous amount of electricity. But in order to procure and provide that electricity while maintaining reliability and affordability, we're going to have to come out of our partisan political corners and take a serious engineering approach to how we are going to assess this math problem, because there are direct challenges. The quickest way to deliver electricity to win the AI race and provide the necessary power to these data centers is to do something called data center co-location. It's essentially building a data center behind the meter and plugging it in directly to an existing source of generation, maybe a nuclear plant. On the surface, this seems like an excellent idea. You're providing power to the data center. It's coming from a nuclear plant, so it's carbon-free from an emissions standpoint. And you're enabling the U.S. to provide that power to take a step ahead of China in the AI race. Here's the problem. We're already constrained when it comes to capacity in the markets in the U.S. And so to take a limited amount of capacity out of the market behind the meter at a moment in time when capacity is already short, you're going to lead to increased prices spread out over even fewer and fewer consumers. Now that's a challenge, but to me that's a solvable one because you can throw money at it. The hyperscalers have the resources that we can come to some terms in response to cost allocation and figure out who will bear the burden of these expenses. The greater threat is resource adequacy. Now, it's only significant a couple of days a year, but these were the days of the year that kept me awake when I served as chairman of FERC. What do you do on the hottest days of summer when Americans need air conditioning? Or what do you do on the coldest days of winter when Americans need heat? I'm going to be totally honest with you. If a grid operator is given the choice on that really cold winter day or on that really hot summer day of providing power to a 24/7 data center necessary to support AI or to a residential consumer that needs heat or needs air, it's going to the data center. And that's where I think the real conundrum comes when it comes to energy policy in the US. But here's why I'm optimistic. I think AI and the significance of winning the AI race against the Chinese Communist Party is going to unify Americans and break us out of our partisan political corners. I think on the political left, there will be a recognition that we cannot possibly win the AI race while keeping energy affordable and reliable without fossil fuels. That we're going to need at least natural gas in the short term to bridge us from an energy standpoint to win that AI race. But on the political right, with the Trump administration, I think the recognition is going to come that we cannot possibly win the AI race while keeping energy affordable and reliable with fossil fuels alone. That we're going to need solar and storage and wind and nuclear and geothermal. But we're also going to need negawatts, things like energy efficiency, demand response, grid enhancing technologies to get greater efficiency from our existing infrastructure, distributed energy resources, virtual power plants, things that conservatives have historically been against. It is going to take that kind of comprehensive approach in order for us to navigate this in the US. So we're here at ENRich to talk about decoding Trump, to talk about the role that US energy policy will play. I'm grateful that you guys are giving me this opportunity, but I'm also forthwith in that there is a real nexus between the United States of America and India when it comes to energy. I was quite proud during my tenure at FERC. I signed 4 memorandums of understanding with the Indian government, with the PNGRB, with CERC, the Indian equivalent of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission in the US. And this was not a take or pay deal. This was not, I had initially thought when I took my seat at a domestic energy regulator in the US, I didn't think there'd be much of a foreign policy component to my role. I thought maybe because we had the responsibility of evaluating applications for liquefied natural gas export facilities that I would need to assess whether there was a market available overseas before we approved of the domestic infrastructure necessary to supply the product. I thought maybe that's my foreign policy exposure in this role. I was shocked and blessed in many ways to see the interest went far beyond that. So here in India, the government, regardless of political ideology, is focused on how do we provide power to the people, to this growing middle class in India that has increasing demand for power. How do we do it in a way while we also maintain sustainability and don't backslide on the environment and lead to pollution? The challenges here in India are so much more significant than in the US because of the vast size of the population and the demand for power and the difficulty to build out some of the necessary infrastructure. And what I loved was in signing these MOUs between the US government and India, between FERC and CERC, between FERC and the PNGRB, we were sharing our knowledge. We weren't compelling you all to buy a commodity from the US. We were teaching you all, these are the experiences that we've had with capacity, with energy, with ancillary services. This is what has worked. This is how we have been able to successfully squeeze carbon out of US power markets while maintaining reliability and affordability. And as India develops its market structure, learn from the US, learn from our experience, and build upon that. To me, that is the greatest form of diplomacy, and it still continues to this day. So I know the headlines are very tense right now. I am not unaware that I'm speaking here at a moment in time in which the U.S.-India relationship is coming into question. And what was raised in the previous presentation around tariffs, look, this is not my area of expertise. I am not a trade person, but I am a human. I'm an American of Indian origin, and I recognize the sensitivity that is happening on the trade front. I'm here at ENRich to say, let's look beyond that. Let's look to the opportunities that we have when it comes to energy and the relationship that the US and India can have when it comes to energy. It is the most significant thing that I think our two countries can do. And not to be sappy, and apologies again for my poor Bengali in my introduction, but the reality is it's a big deal to many of us that I, Neil Chatterjee, the son of Sunil and Malaya Chatterjee of Calcutta, was the chairman of the United States Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. I take it seriously. I take the US-India relationship seriously. I take our need to decarbonize while maintaining affordability and reliability seriously. It's an honor to be here at ENRich. Thank you for bearing with me and hearing me out today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chatterjee. The Bengali was amazing. It's much better than what I can speak, although I'm not a Bengali, but anyway.
Can we get you back on stage?
Yes, sorry about that.
Thank you for that inspiring message. Absolutely brilliant. Something I'm sure you will like.
Thank you, Mr. Chatterjee.
Thank you again.
So that was a very, very hard-hitting, speech, and I think a few takeaways for me is, I think the very impactful statement saying that we cannot let politics affect energy, and we need to anticipate as governments, as country, we need to anticipate the conundrum that will arise with progress, with growth, with the high energy requirement, and to address it while keeping affordability and reliability in mind, not with politics, but with innovation. And that, I think, is kind of the summary of what's to follow over there for the next two days. And I hope that we can do justice to this conversation and bring out what is required to actually make this conundrum, to solve this conundrum. And of course, we need to leave it to the engineers. That was the other one that came out.
Absolutely. No, but that was really amazing. Like a consultant, we like to put all these in frameworks, and we sort of walked away with 4 things for me. One, about how you bring balance. Second, about being bold. Having belief in what can happen, and finally, the ability to bring everyone together and build. Thank you so much.
Great. So with that, should we break for tea? And I think lots to discuss and reflect upon. So I welcome all of you to join us for tea and be back in
10 minutes? Yeah.
I think 15 minutes.
No,
Let's give them
10.
5 more minutes.
My namesake has made it very clear.
10
it's
or
10.
15? Okay, 15. We'll hear the bell because the next session is the ministerial session. Yeah, thanks.